So there's nothing really crazy about this. Really, you just take it, and I'm trying to look at my photos right now, and you basically just determine how far this goes out, but really the majority of the exhaust is going to be around the hatch itself. And then you want to try to like fan it out with the brush just a little bit. Like this. Just need a little bit, and you're just fanning it out so that it's not all in one place, so that it kind of evens out a little more realistically like this. So that looks pretty good. You can't really see it as well right now because it's wet paint obviously, but you get the idea. And then what I'll do is I'll let that set for a minute and then come back and add another coat of black to it and kind of focus it, as you'll see, around this area. So I'm just going to take a little more, the next layer, and build up another layer. Just get enough paint on there. I'm not really dry brushing this either. This is pretty much a direct wet brush. But most of the heavier parts of the exhaust is going to be concentrated around the exhaust hatch itself. So you're going to kind of want to, that's where you're going to kind of want to concentrate it, and still try to keep fanning it out so that you're not all putting it in the same area. You don't want to do that for one thing. You just want to kind of fan it out. And now looking at my photos, it kind of goes back a little ways behind the dynamic fan, so I'm going to kind of put a little bit in between there. And you just keep working it back. It's even a little bit on this horn too, and even a little on the bell. So I'm going to kind of just darken those a little. Just nice and softly though. And this will look a lot better once I get the chalk pestles on, as you'll see. But really this is just, like I said, the base coat. Just keep fanning them out like this. A little bit up on this fan grill. Don't forget to hit every angle of those fans too. That's another important feature. It's good to do that so it doesn't look unrealistic. You don't want to have bare spots on the fans where you don't hit them with paint. They all have to be covered up, so just a little tip. And it does look like it gets pretty dirty by the radiator cooling fan, so I'm going to just kind of start to dry brush some of this as I move back towards here. So I'm going to just get as much paint off as possible, and then just kind of start working it into these areas back here. Tops of the fans. Hit that horn again. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so onto the pilots. As you can see, there's quite a good bit of grime and grease buildup around the front of the pilot. So I'm going to try to focus on that next. And this is the front shot of the unit, of course, but it's pretty much going to be the same on the back as well. So we're going to go ahead and try to recreate this look here. So I have it elevated a little bit so I can kind of have more control over it. But what I'm just going to do is take my medium brush again and just start patting it on like this. In these areas, and it's hard getting in here with the camera in the way, but I'm going to try. Seems to be working okay though. And the key with this is you just build it up in layers. You can see this first layer isn't that heavy, but that's alright, because you don't want to try to put a whole lot of paint on in the one area at a time. Especially with all these details, you don't want to cover them too quickly. You just want to build it up in nice, smooth, even layers like I'm doing. And most of that grime is going to be concentrated at the very base of the pilot, as you can see, and around those MU cables. And then around the coupler box area, and then we're going to hit the couplers a little bit. Get them coated. We'll also weather these with chalk pestles later when we get to it. Just get a little bit up on these railings too. Kind of try to fan it out so it looks like there's like a little kick up or spray on these railings. Kind of like in the picture. I'm just trying to base that off. So it's looking pretty good. Get a little more paint for that coupler. And don't forget to hit the bottom of the coupler as well when you're doing that. I like to make sure I get every last individual little spot. And work on that pilot as well. Get a little bit under there. So that's looking pretty good. And now I'll move on to the back pilot. Pretty much the same as the front. But I'm just going to basically do exactly what I did on the front and just build it up in smooth layers. It's a little more chunky on the back. I'm looking at the photos and it looks a little more rougher. So I'm just going to kind of go a little more heavy on the earth brown this time with this batch, or this mixture of paint, and just kind of start working it in there and kind of fanning it up again. As you can see, it's really just keep popping up, though that's kind of annoying. It's going to happen when you're doing something like this, but it gets annoying. Top of that coupler. And just hitting every inch of the knuckle, make sure it's all covered up. And then once again, hit the bottom. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to try to kind of take a little extra paint now and kind of work it into the deck area, kind of resembling the areas where there's going to be the most traffic. It's going to be from the footing. I'm just going to hit the top of this high hood too. So that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to start kind of working on modeling the oil spill, or the grease that drips down from the oil filter up here. And I'm going to be using another product for this, which I have on hand, and I've actually recently discovered this stuff and it works pretty well. It's actually an oil-based stain, which I have here. And this is black Floco enamel stain. There you go. And this stuff works really well for oil streaks. So I'm going to grab my prototype photo here. Now, looking at the photo, it looks like it's concentrated towards the back of this hump here. And I'm just going to take a little bit of my oil and then just start kind of building it up at the top here, like this. And then I'm just going to kind of start to streak it down a little, like this. Just going kind of slow, you just take it directly down like this. There's another streak. It's pretty heavy back here, so I'm just gonna keep working it. It does a pretty good job and it covers pretty well, but like sometimes you might have to do several coats to kind of build it up in layers, but for the most part it covers pretty well, I found. And I'm just going to go back with a heavier layer, like that. I'm going to get a little bit up here in this little corner here. I'm seeing a little streak in the photo, about right here, I'd say. I'm just going to fan it out. There we go. So as you can see, that looks pretty good. And you just let that dry for a few minutes and it does a pretty good job. But while we're still working on with our color, what I'm going to do is go ahead and start adding some fuel spill. So I'm going to take my brush again, get a little bit of my oil, and I'm just going to take it and then just start filling it up here around the outlet. I'm just going to start streaking it down like this. And it kind of build up in a little puddle, as you can see in the photo, so I'm just going to kind of have it like that. As you can see, it looks a little sloppy, but I'm just modeling it like in the photos. And then I'm just going to go with a heavier black layer and just continue to streak like this. And there's a little bit back here. Just streak that down like this. So it's looking pretty good. So that's the first side there, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up that aspect. So now that I got most of the oil streaks and spills done, I'm going to go ahead and start my highlight weathering, which is where I reincorporate my Anita's acrylic straight white or flat white. And I'm just going to use a fine brush like this, and I'm just going to dry brush. So I'm going to take a little bit like that. I actually got a little speck there, that's alright. I'm just going to take this over. You get most of the paint off like this, and then you go and start just highlighting like this. I'll just zoom in on this area here so you can kind of see, but you're just very gently, you're not trying to be too heavy, but just little areas like this, kind of modeling the road dust kind of gets on these things. I'm just doing this like in the pictures, just very softly. I'm going to get a little up in this grill here, kind of make it look, enhance it a little bit, like that. And then I'm going to kind of start at the fuel tank here, and I'm just going to start modeling a little bit of dusty effects, like this. Around basically really the ends is where it's going to matter, but you can see a few streaks sometimes on the sides like this. In this particular picture, I'm just going to go ahead and add that. But stuff like that. I'm going to hit this truck again. But as you can see, like even dry brushing it just takes just a little paint and you can get a lot covered, as you can see. And this looks really good. You hit the back of the fuel tank, that's an important spot. That's where you're going to have your mud splatter and all that. So that's another area you want to hit and make sure you get thoroughly. So I'm actually going to take a little bit and start kind of hitting that grill there. Just going to take a little bit like this and just enhance the depth of the grill with a little bit of that highlight like this. And once again, I'm going to take this part here and lift it up and work on the front pilot. And I'm still using my one photo, so this is just going to be based off the photos. But what you do, I kind of start from the coupler first and then just work the highlights like the mud splatter on first, and then I just kind of start to add the mud spray to kind of highlight a few things, bring out that level of detail. Just very softly though, not too much. I don't want to overdo it, so put that back down. I'm even going to add a little to the front here, and a little bit to the base, and even a little bit up here on the low hood, just like in the photos. Not too much though. A little bit up here. Just kind of trying to make it look a little dusty, like it has a lot of road dust on it. That's what I'm going for. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to the other side and then move on to the back pilot. And then we'll move on to the chalk weathering. Alright, so here's where we're at now, and as you can see I've gotten quite a bit done. At this point all my wet washes and weathering and all that are pretty much done. So what we're going to be moving on to next is the actual chalk pestle weathering, which will enhance the detail, and we'll go ahead and add the detail highlights and stuff. So that'll be the next step, and as you can see, I'll just give you a quick go around. The whole thing is looking pretty good. I think it looks good. You got the oil streaks and all that good stuff. And then on the back, as you can see, nice and dirty. There's the top. It's looking especially good, and it's only going to get better. I've just clear coated this, and it's pretty well good to go. All the work underneath is sealed up. I masked all the windows and the lights off so that there wasn't any fog or anything like that on them. So what we're going to go ahead and move into next is the chalk pestles. Okay, so now onto the chalk weathering, and it's pretty simple, as you'll see, but it's just a matter of choosing the right brush. For this, I'm using an older brush, and this one's a kind of a flat medium brush, and it's very, very soft, but this is an ideal brush for chalk weathering. So what I'm going to do to start, I always start at the roof, and I like to do the exhaust and a few other things. Now I'm just going to grab my prototype photo again so I can do this the right way, obviously. But to start, I'm going to take a little bit of my black right here, and I just basically rub my brush on it and then transfer the chalk to the model like this. And you'll notice that it creates this really nice flat even tone. I'll zoom in on this so you can see it a little better. You can see it kind of softens up that rough looking area of just the paint, and it really softens it. It looks good. And you're just gonna transfer it out like this, and I'm just gonna get a little back here, and it dulls things down too, which is also especially important for this, because after that dull coat, even though it's dull coat, it has a little bit of a light sheen to it, so it's kind of helping to cover that up too in those areas, especially where you weathered those heavier ones. Now around this hatch here, there's a little bit of grime rust, so what I'm going to do is take a little earth brown. I'm just going to kind of hit that area right here with a little earth brown. Just about 2 layers right there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take a little back here, and I'm going to take a little more, put some right here around that area. And then on the roof, I'm going to take some more black, and I'm just going to kind of start to streak it like this. And do you notice the instantaneous difference right there? How it looks? Look at that. Just going to wipe a little bit off. It is a little heavy. But look at that. Look how quick of a difference that makes. I'm just going to get a little on this side. Looking pretty good. I'm going to get the nose here real quick with a little earth. Just like that. We'll go ahead and move on to another area. Now on the sides of these grills, I take some more earth brown, and I'm just going to basically concentrate it in these grills like this. And you kind of just spread it around a little. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to move down to the radiator and pretty much do the same thing. And obviously I'm going to do this on both sides, but I'm just going to do the one side because you get the idea. It's just really simple though, and it looks really good too. You can even kind of streak a little bit down the high hood if you want to kind of represent a little grime, further grime I mean. But the key with the dull coat is that you want to have a dull coat finish on this, not so much gloss, but a dull coat, so that the chalk has something more to bond to, so it has more tooth and it'll stick better. That's the key right there. But so far this is looking pretty good. I'll go ahead and move on to the trucks and the fuel tank now. And with that, I'm just gonna move it back a little bit so you can see. I'm just gonna take a little earth brown, and again I'm gonna concentrate in the nooks and crannies of the fuel tank like this. And I'm just gonna work it in there. And it does not take that much, as you can tell, to cover it, but it really looks good once you get in there. I'm just going to kind of build it up like that, and then I'm going to get a little bit on this truck here. And you just take this earth brown and you kind of put it in the very top of the truck, and it creates that that look of like fresh grime kind of starting to build up at the very top of the truck and working its way down, as you can see. And it looks really good. Just keep and get a little bit in this step well, a little bit at the top of the deck. I'm just going to continue to move down a little bit, get a little more in this corner up here, just a little though. And I'll get some here on the other truck, as you can see, just right at the top, and then I kind of just work it in like that. You'll notice that I'm not really streaking it down either. It's just that I'm blotching it on and then just kind of working it in like this. It's not so much that I'm trying to streak it, it's just that I'm trying to kind of build it up in those little layers, especially up top, to give the illusion of more of like a fresh grime, as you can see. Just kind of starting to work in a little. It looks pretty good. I really enjoyed that technique, and it really helps to make it look a lot more realistic, in my opinion. It just looks a lot better. So, and then on the back pilot, I'll just do one pilot to show you, but for the most part it's pretty simple. You just take a little earth brown again, you just hit certain little areas like around the MU cables. Just to kind of enhance that fresh grime. Trying to bring that look into play here. And then with the knuckle, or the coupler, I always take a little fresh rust and then just start applying it to the coupler like this to kind of make it look like some fresh rust. Works pretty well, just like that. Now at the top of the high hood, I'm going to just bring down a little bit of black chalk grime, indicating there's a little diesel soot kind of streaking down like this. And you'll notice almost instantaneously the difference, and it works even better if you do it in multiple layers. But see how it kind of quickly builds up like that? It looks really good. And I just streak it down just like that, and it really helps to give the illusion of a depth of grime and rust. I like it. So I'll go ahead and move on to the other side here. Okay, so at this point the weathering is pretty much complete. We got all our highlights and chalk weathering done. All the detailing is complete, and the thing is looking very good, as you can see. I'm really happy with it. It looks nice. Really nice. And my camera's not even picking it up right now, but it just looks so good. I don't know. It's kind of a downside. It looks 10 times better in person than it does on my camera, but I'm telling you, it looks awesome. But we're not done yet. There is one last thing we have to do to this, and it is clean the wheels. Alright, so now it's time to clean the wheels, and this is pretty simple. All I'm going to use here is a little bit of 50% alcohol. I don't recommend you use the higher grade, like getting into like 70 or 50, or 91%. It's kind of unnecessary, and the lower grade alcohol works just fine. So what I do is I wet a paper towel down like this, and then set it on the tracks. And we'll go ahead and take the 8044, run it across this railer. Get her on. I'm going to give it a test run to make sure it's actually running, which it is. And now I'll go ahead and put her full throttle and then just start to run it. Alright, so the trucks are officially done, and this is both the rear and front truck. And as you can see, they picked up quite a good bit of grime during the weathering process, and that's why it's important to clean them. So I went ahead and dried off the wheels, and the unit is pretty much ready to go, so we'll go ahead and give her a test run here. And this is on straight DC, by the way. You can see it just starts right up. Nice and quiet too. And here she is, the finished product. CSX 8044 is now complete. And this took about 2 hours and 35 minutes total, but because of the grace of video editing, you guys saw it in a much shorter period of time. But this pretty much covers all my techniques for weathering a locomotive. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative to you, and I think, in my opinion, 8044 looks freaking awesome. So I hope this helps you guys and kind of inspires you. And I hope it shows you kind of my techniques so you can kind of learn If you have any questions about anything that I've done in this video, I'll say again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to comment or send me a message or anything like that, and I'll be sure to answer them. But for the most part, yeah, that's pretty much how it's done. So until next time, you can take care, guys. Thanks for watching.